Hey everyone, Adam Savage here, and welcome to a trip down memory lane. We've all seen those news stories about product recalls, right? Today, we're diving into a time when companies thought adding radioactivity to products was a fantastic idea. Radium, thorium, uranium, these were marketing gold. They were used in everything from toothpaste to toys. Buckle up as we uncover 10 surprising radioactive products. Get ready to have your mind blown. Let's kick things off with something we can all relate to. Energy drinks. Now, I'm all for a little caffeine boost, but back in the 1920s, one company took it to a whole new level. I'm talking about Radithor, an energy drink that promised to invigorate you with the power of radium. This wasn't some shady back-alley concoction either. Radithor was marketed as a health tonic, a cure-all for everything from low energy to impotence. The company behind it, Bailey Radium Laboratories, claimed that the radium in their drink would energize your cells and revitalize your entire system. People were buying into the hype, literally. Radithor was flying off the shelves, with everyone from socialites to athletes eager to get their hands on this radioactive elixir. It seemed like the future of energy drinks was, well, radioactive. But as we'll soon find out, the promise of a radioactive pick-me-up came with a hefty price, one that nobody could have predicted. One of Radithor's most enthusiastic customers was Eben Byers, a wealthy industrialist and amateur golfer. Byers swore by Radithor, downing bottle after bottle of the radium-laced drink. He claimed it cured his arm injury and gave him a newfound zest for life. But Byers' glowing endorsement would soon turn into a cautionary tale. Over time, the radium in Radithor began to take its toll on his body. He developed severe health problems, his bones became brittle, and his jaw literally started to disintegrate. Byers' tragic demise sent shockwaves through the nation. The dangers of radium, once touted as a miracle element, were now impossible to ignore. The government stepped in, shutting down Bailey Radium Laboratories and launching investigations into the safety of radioactive products. The Radithor scandal marked a turning point in the public's perception of radioactivity. It was a stark reminder that even the most enticing promises can have deadly consequences. Let's move on from radioactive beverages to something more doughy. Chapatis, the unleavened flatbread, a staple in South Asian cuisines. In 1969, a study in Coventry revealed radioactive fallout in some chapatis. The radioactivity came from contaminated flour. Atmospheric nuclear testing released particles that settled on crops. The levels were low, but it raised concerns about long-term effects. The Coventry Chapati study didn't just disappear after the initial buzz. In 1995, the issue of radioactive chapatis resurfaced, this time with a focus on the health of South Asian communities in the UK. Researchers wanted to know if the consumption of chapatis with even low levels of radioactivity had any long-term health consequences for these communities. Then, just this year, in 2023, the debate reignited once more. A new generation of scientists, armed with advanced technology and a deeper understanding of radiation's effects on the human body, began re-examining the data from the original study. Their goal? To determine if the initial findings were accurate and if there were any previously overlooked health risks. This renewed interest in the Coventry Chapati study highlights the enduring legacy of nuclear testing and the ethical responsibility we have to understand its long-term consequences. It's a reminder that even decades after the fact, the fallout from our actions can continue to affect us in unexpected ways. Alright, let's talk about toothpaste. I mean, who doesn't love that minty, fresh feeling after a good brushing? But back in the day, some folks thought, hey, why not add a little something extra, like thorium? I'm not kidding. There was this toothpaste called Doramad, made by a German company called Gesellschaft, and they were all about that radioactive life. They claimed this thorium-infused toothpaste would not only clean your pearly whites, but also strengthen your gums and even fight bacteria with the power of, you guessed it, radiation. Now, we know better these days. Back then, the science of radiation was still new territory. People were just starting to understand its potential benefits, but they didn't fully grasp the risks involved, especially with prolonged exposure. Gesellschaft played up the whole science-backed angle, even though their claims were pretty shaky at best. They marketed Doramad as this cutting-edge, almost futuristic toothpaste. And you know what? People bought it literally. Now, thankfully, nobody is brushing with thorium these days. The whole idea of radioactive toothpaste fizzled out pretty quickly, and there are a couple of reasons for that. First off, the science just didn't add up. The amount of thorium in Doramad was tiny, way too small to have any significant beneficial effect. Plus, the more we learned about radiation, the more we realized that putting it in your mouth probably wasn't the best idea. Secondly, people started associating radiation with danger, not health. This was around the same time that the dangers of radium, another radioactive element, were becoming tragically clear. Remember those radium girls we talked about earlier? So, between the lack of real benefits and the growing public concern about radiation, radioactive toothpaste quickly became a thing of the past. And you know what? I think we're all better off for it. Okay folks, buckle up because things are about to get weird. And a little uncomfortable. I'm talking about radioactive suppositories. Yes, you heard that right. Back in the early 20th century, a company called Home Products Company decided that what the world needed was a healthy dose of radium, delivered directly to your nether regions. They called them Vita Radium Suppositories. And they claimed these little capsules could cure everything from impotence to constipation. Now let's just take a moment to appreciate the absurdity of this. I mean, we've all heard of snake oil salesmen, but this takes the cake. The idea that sticking radium up your backside would somehow magically revitalize your love life or cure your digestive issues is just mind-boggling. But here's the thing, people were desperate. Back then, there weren't many effective treatments for a lot of these ailments. And when you're desperate, you're more likely to try anything, even if it sounds completely bonkers. So, what exactly did Home Products Company claim these Vita Radium suppositories could do? Well, according to their marketing materials, these little capsules were nothing short of a miracle cure. They claimed it could boost energy, increase vitality, and even make you more, manly. They even went so far as to say that radium was this magical life force that could rejuvenate your cells and turn back the clock on aging. It was all complete nonsense, of course. There was zero scientific evidence to support any of these claims. Unsurprisingly, the FDA eventually caught wind of this whole radium suppository situation and was not impressed. They quickly shut down Home Products Company and their miracle cure-all. And thankfully, the idea of sticking radioactive material up your backside went the way of the dodo. Alright, we've talked about radioactive toothpaste and suppositories, but hold on to your hats, because it's about to get even wilder. Get ready for the Radiendocrinator. Invented by William J. Bailey, this metal box with radium was marketed as a cure-all. It promised to cure everything from impotence to baldness for $150. That's over $2,000 today. And yes, people bought it. Bailey was a master salesman, playing on hopes and fears. He claimed it stimulated the endocrine system with radium's rays, but there was no scientific basis for any of it. It was all smoke and mirrors, designed to separate desperate people from their hard-earned cash. So, how did this whole Radiendocrinator scam finally come to an end? Well, it took a while, but eventually the authorities caught up with Bailey. See, he made the mistake of claiming that his device could cure diabetes, and that's where he crossed the line. The FDA, which was already keeping a close eye on Bailey and his dubious claims, swooped in and shut down his operation. They seized his Radiendocrinators, confiscated his promotional materials, and basically ran him out of business. But the story doesn't end there. Remember Eben Byers, the wealthy industrialist who drank radium water thinking it was good for him? Well, guess what? Byers was also a big believer in the Radiendocrinator. He swore by the thing, even claimed it cured his impotence. Spoiler alert, it didn't. In fact, Byers' obsession with radium, both in liquid and Radiendocrinator form, eventually led to his tragic and very preventable death. But that's a story for another time. Who doesn't want to look younger, right? Some folks thought they found the fountain of youth in a jar of face cream, though Radia claimed to make you more radiant with thorium. Yes, radioactive elements in your face powder. They even consulted Dr. Alfred Curie for credibility. But radioactive materials stay radioactive. The French government banned Thoradia in 1937. Face cream wasn't the only beauty product to get the radioactive treatment. Powders, rouges, and even lipsticks promised to enhance beauty with radioactive elements. People eagerly embraced this new technology, putting it directly on their skin. The dangers of radiation were still being discovered, but that didn't stop people from buying these products. Just because something is new and exciting doesn't mean it's safe. Okay, so we've covered face creams, toothpaste, even suppositories. What could possibly be next? Well, how about something for all you smokers out there? Now I know what you're thinking, smoking is already dangerous enough. Why would they add radiation to the mix? And you'd be right to ask. But back in the 1980s, a Japanese company called NAC thought it would be a good idea to create cigarette plates lined with uranium. These plates, marketed for their ability to ionize the air and supposedly improve the taste of cigarettes, became surprisingly popular. I mean, who wouldn't want a little extra zing with their morning smoke, right? The problem is, ionizing radiation, even in small doses, isn't exactly good for you. Now you might be thinking, surely someone put a stop to this. The NRC got wind of these radioactive cigarette plates and took action. They warned the public about the potential dangers, stating that prolonged exposure could increase lung cancer risk. But some people, convinced of the benefits, continued to use them. It shows that even well-intentioned warnings can fall on deaf ears. Remember folks, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is, especially if it involves smoking uranium. Alright, so we've talked about radioactive products you put on your face, in your mouth, even elsewhere. But what about something you could snuggle up with at night? Believe it or not, there were actually companies that made radioactive comforters and pads. One such product was the Demise Uranium Comforter, marketed as a cure-all for everything from arthritis to insomnia. The idea was that the low levels of radiation emitted by the comforter would somehow stimulate your body's natural healing processes. Of course, there was no scientific evidence to support these claims, but that didn't stop people from buying them. And if a radioactive comforter wasn't enough, there was also the Cosmos Radioactive Pad, which promised to revitalize your tired body with the power of radium. These pads, often placed under mattresses, were marketed towards people suffering from aches, pains, and low energy. It's almost comical to think that people were willing to sleep on top of radioactive materials, but it was a different time. Of course, the government eventually caught on to these radioactive sleep aids and, unsurprisingly, wasn't too keen on people snuggling up to radioactive materials every night. Both the Demise Uranium Comforter and the Cosmos Radioactive Pad were eventually banned, but not before countless people were exposed to unnecessary radiation. It's a cautionary tale about the dangers of believing everything you hear, especially when it comes to products that promise miracle cures. And it's a reminder that sometimes the best way to get a good night's sleep is to stick with the non-radioactive kind of blanket. Alright folks, buckle up because this one's a doozy. We're diving into the world of embalming fluid, and trust me, it's not for the faint of heart. Enter ESCO Radium Liquid Sunshine Embalming Fluid. Yes, you heard that right, liquid sunshine. Problem is, it was chock full of radium, a highly radioactive element. It was more like a recipe for disaster, exposing morticians and the deceased to harmful radiation. The truly wild part? ESCO Radium Liquid Sunshine. Embalming fluid wasn't a one-off. There were other brands out there all trying to cash in on the radioactive craze. It's like everyone forgot that radiation is a powerful force, not some magical elixir. These companies knew about the potential dangers of radium. But the allure of a miracle product often overshadowed common sense. Thankfully, the use of radioactive materials in embalming fluid was eventually regulated out of existence. Alright, let's talk about something we all need: water, but not just any water. We're talking about water with a little something extra: thorium. Yeah, you heard me right. In the early 2000s, a Japanese company called Nakano Tech Company Limited decided to bottle up some H2O with a radioactive twist. They called it Well Aqua, and this wasn't some shady back alley operation. This stuff was sold in stores, marketed as a health drink. The claim: the low levels of thorium in the water would release alpha particles, and those particles would get this, ionize the water, making it healthier. Now, I'm all for a refreshing beverage, but something about drinking irradiated water just doesn't sit right with me. And guess what? The scientific community agreed. Turns out there's no evidence to support the idea that drinking irradiated water has any health benefits. But here's the thing about the Well Aqua situation that really gets me going. It wasn't just the questionable science, it was the marketing. They slapped a hefty price tag on these radioactive water bottles, preying on people's desire for health and wellness. It's one thing to experiment with new ideas, but it's another thing entirely to mislead the public for profit. These bottles were marketed towards folks looking for a health boost, not a dose of radiation with their daily hydration. Thankfully, the Well Aqua water bottles were eventually pulled from the shelves, but not before they served as a stark reminder of the power of marketing and the importance of critical thinking. Just because something sounds fancy or scientific doesn't mean it's good for you. So, next time you reach for a bottle of water, I suggest sticking to the plain old H2O. Leave the radioactive isotopes to the scientists, alright? Well, there you have it, folks. A whirlwind tour of some of the most surprising and terrifying ways radioactive materials have been used. From energy drinks to embalming fluid, we've seen it all. The good news is that we've come a long way in our understanding of radiation. We've learned from the past and developed safer alternatives. Let me know in the comments what you thought about these bizarre radioactive products. And be sure to like and subscribe for more explorations into the wild world of science and history.